uh, Sydney Harbour Bridge, and I'll start our presentation. Okay, so how is technology changing the workplace? Well, the one thing is that change is dramatic. So it's a rapid change, and it doesn't matter what you're involved in, whether you're maybe in the mining industry or you're going into working in building, the technology is changing. And that's one thing that we have to remember as a student going into the workforce, is the fact that you've got a set of skills that you've got at this point in time, but you've got to make sure that those skills are kept up to date. Otherwise, you get left behind. So that you can't just go off and do a course and then not work in that profession. You've got to be keeping up with all the changes that happen. Now, this is a shot of an office, in fact, a typing pool, back in about the 1950s. You'll notice that the telephone there, okay, very seldom we get to see telephones now because everything's so mobile. And you'll see that they're using typewriters. Now, it's amazing how technology has changed. And I'm going to talk about this room, but a little bit later. So this is the same occupation as a typing pool, where predominantly females would be employed to type. And you'll notice that this is in the 1970s, slightly changed in fashion, but now we've gone from a standard typewriter to an electric typewriter. So that means that your speed may be increased, and also it's easier to fix up mistakes. This was possibly one of the first generations of a typewriter, and you'll notice that this is designed so that you just place the paper in and you press down the keys or the plungers on the top. Slightly different from what we know as a typewriter. The Remington typewriter was a big invention, and it was quite precise as a piece of equipment. So when you press down on the buttons, those keys, then these keys would come up and they would physically hit the paper. And you could move that slightly to change it, whether it was a capital letter or lowercase. But there was a limit to how fast you could type. And in fact, if you did type too fast, then these arms would come and they would swing and they would get stuck. So they would collide. So the design of the keyboard for a typewriter wasn't designed to be fast, unlike when we do touch typing on a computer keyboard. Now, if we look at a keyboard, whether this is an old Commodore 64, this is the first type of computer I had with 64K of memory. If you look at the top row of letters, and I just asked you just to jumble them up and try and work out what was the biggest word that you could make, it's actually typewriter. Because the way which they sold typewriters was to walk into an office, you'd carry your typewriter and you'd ask the manager if they'd seen it. And the sales pitch was, you wouldn't say anything. You'd just put in a piece of paper, hit the carriage return, and then hit the A button. And that was the A key was on the far left, so you'd know where it was, space bar. And so that sales reps could actually type in the word typewriter, they placed those words or those letters on the top row. So definitely not good for speed. Now, technology's gone a long way. If I think about when I first started teaching back in 1988, and this was my first computer, 64K of memory, and compare it to what we have now. So storage and speed. Prior to that, we also had a way of storing data or programming using cards. So that was quite inefficient, but it did work. Okay, the computer I'm using now for this presentation, a MacBook, and I must apologise, there's a class next door, so hopefully they're not too noisy for you. Now, if this is one of my grandsons, William, and I start to think about, for technology changing, how much technology is going to be changing for when he's an adult. So for most of our students, they're used to technology in the form of a phone. So this phone, okay, if you can have a look at the apps, the precision, the amount of storage space, the extra programs that you can have are all in one device. So I just wonder what it's going to be like when William gets old. Okay, I'm showing a bit of my age, but I was born back in 1963, and I remember when I was probably about 5, my next door neighbour invited all the neighbourhood around to his house to be there at 4 o'clock in the morning. And that was so that people could see him talk to his daughter, who was over in the UK. Because back then, if you wanted to talk to somebody, the message had to go by undersea cable, because we didn't have satellites. So that's a big thing that's opened up the world. Yeah, I just want to show you a video, and I'm hoping this is going to work for us.
That's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is it?
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
Okay, that was a bit of comic relief, but one thing which we're having now is with automation, and that's because of computers, we're actually able to do tasks a lot faster, a lot more efficient. But we still need people like that to actually be involved, to actually fix them. So we've still got employment, but we've got to change our focus on what our job is. And for most of our school leavers, they will be using the technology to do that. The other thing which is happening now is artificial intelligence. And there's been a lot of discussions about ChatGPT and recently of Auto GPT, where you can get your computer to actually do it, or to write essays for you for school. And it's a very good tool for doing research, but it's scary because with Auto GPT, we can actually get the artificial intelligence to actually move or to actually design web pages and take people out of jobs. Now, I said about Australia being at 26 million, and I think Malaysia is probably about, is it 30 million? But
yes, 52 million, I think.
Yeah. So I suppose the statistics would probably work the same in your country when we talk about the amount of jobs that will be getting changed. So 44% of jobs we believe are at risk of being disrupted or changed because of digital technology. And there'll be some jobs that they haven't been invented yet. So if you look back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you wouldn't find a job, of somebody doing a web design. You wouldn't find anything to do with, or 20 years ago, you probably would. 30 years ago, you wouldn't have that many people involved in the computer industry. But our countries are looking towards the future because we need an income for a country, and unless you've got a lot of resources that you can sell, then you're really looking at technology as being the product that you can sell. In Australia, the estimate is that just a 1% shift of our workforce to go into STEM areas will actually give us an extra $57.4 billion over 20 years. And if you look at the occupations that are changing, 75% of those, of the fast growing occupations, need you to have a background in STEM. Now, our workplace has changed, and for most students, they might remember having to be at home during COVID. And COVID has really sped up a lot of things and changed things. In the education area, we now realise that there's a lot of things that you can have to teach students, like using online platforms. Now, COVID and working from home as a student, that did cause a few difficulties, but students were quite resilient at the way they got through it. But business, well, a lot of businesses basically didn't have anybody to work because everybody was at home. So the office and our workplace changed from the idea of having everybody that was employed being at one building, then your office would be moved to your house. Now, that has actually continued, even though we've got COVID isn't affecting us as far as sickness. It's actually meant that a lot of people are saying, well, hey, I don't need to go into work. I don't need to waste money on fuel. I don't need to waste time traveling. So companies are actually allowing a lot of their workers to stay at home and work. Now, there is a problem that's inherent in that situation, and that is that you need people to be able to have those skills to be able to work at home. They need to be able to communicate using their technology. And they've also got to be good time managers, because if they work from home, there's always a possibility that would be their full-time job all the time when they're at home, that they just won't stop. So workplace, we've got to make boundaries. Now, another thing which has changed, and this is partly a social thing, but this picture was taken of a conference over in Solnay. I think it was about 1937 from memory. a very famous photo because out of all of these participants, it was 17 or 19 of these people went on to win Nobel Prizes in science. If you can see clearly, you'll see that there's only one female, Marie Curie. Now, Marie actually won 2 Nobel Prizes, but we realise that there's no difference between the intelligence of male and females. Yet back then, everything was very much male dominated. And it's a shame because there should have been the same amount of females in that photo. So at that time, we were losing a lot of our intelligence because they were female. They weren't being employed to tackle all those problems that we need. So governments now are really addressing the issue of the fact that we're spending money on educating girls. What we need is the next step is to have those girls moving into areas of STEM where they can actually make a big difference. Now, a few jobs that I'll just stop sharing here. Don't need to there. A few jobs that are coming up that our students will be moving into will be jobs obviously involving data, data security, working remotely, service industries. They'll all be helped by technology. So that is, I suppose, all that I need to really talk about today. But if we think about the way that technology is changing and the fact that when I was young, it was a case of a telephone call to make it to another country, you'd have to book it weeks and weeks in advance. And now we can actually do what we're doing now and collaborate with other countries by video. It makes such a big difference. Okay, now Sahaj, do we have any questions? Because I've been talking a lot there.
So yeah, so far there is no question. So I'd like to welcome any questions from our participants. If you have any questions, you may unmute yourself and ask Dr. Silburn directly, or you can write it on the chat box and I will I'll bring it up, or you can just send me a personal message. But it is a good opportunity to ask Dr. Silburn any questions because, like what I said before, he's a very renowned teacher. He was a top 10 finalist for Global Teacher Prize in 2017. So I'm going to give you some time to think about any questions that you would like to ask. Is that okay, Dr. Silburn?
Yes, perfect. Perfect.
We need. I think the participants need some time to think about questions that they would like to know the answers from you.
I like it how the classroom next door that when the teacher talks, the technology is actually picking this up and recording what she's saying. That's quite cool.
So guys, don't be shy. Do ask questions. So a lot of the participants here are teachers, actually, teachers from other schools. Now, I know you guys have lots to ask. So it's
Yeah. One statistic I was actually reading last week, we have an exam, and I think your country is involved in it too, which is called the PISA exams, and
yes.
it looks at maths and science. And they looked at technology um, as to how much technology students used at school, as to compare to how good they were in the exams. And they actually found that if it was just the teacher that was using the technology to instruct, whether it was using a data projector or the way in which they gave the information, if it was just the teacher, then they actually received the better marks. If it was just the student, then that was actually quite poor as far as their marks. But if you had, in science, if you had the teacher and the students all using technology, then the marks were increased.
Oh, okay. That's interesting, Dr. Silburn. Dr. Silburn, we have a question from a teacher, I believe, Batma Subramaniam. So he or she is asking, what are the challenges we face as educators in using current technology? What are the challenges we face as educators in using current technology?
Yeah, the big thing we have is what I call the haves and have-nots. So, if you have access to technology, or if you have access to books, then you're at a big advantage. Unfortunately, we have, I'm quite lucky in my school that I'm at now, almost all the students will have a laptop at school, and we've got some very good access to the internet. But I have taught at schools where that is not the case, and that teachers do find that frustrating when you might have half of the class have got a device and the other half don't have a device, and they don't have the access to the internet. So when they go home, there's no follow-up, there's no extra work that they can do. So we can talk about collaboration, but you need to have the money behind you in order to have that technology.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Mr. Ryan He, do you have a question? You just raised your hand. Okay. So there's another opinion, and I think this is very popular among Malaysian teachers too, Ken Silburn. So
Look, I look at technology, and I look at ChatGPT as being an extremely efficient way of students being able to get answers. And we want students to be able to find the answers. So we want to set questions, we want students to be able to find the answers. To me, it doesn't make any difference whether they find that from a website or whether they use ChatGPT to find the answer. The one thing we just have to do is to make sure that when a student does work, that they actually understand the answer. So they're not just copying it. They're not just relying on ChatGPT or some other program to do their work for them. But they need to be able to understand. And that's the trick, I think, for teachers. We need to set our assessment and set our learning criteria so that students may be able to use that, but it's not the only thing they do. And a good idea to actually assist that is to get students to collaborate as teams to solve problems.
that's good. So, Dr. Silburn, there's a question from Ryan He. how do we make sure that technology serves us and not the other way around? How do we make sure that technology serves us and not the other way around?
In other words, so how do we make sure that we're not trapped by using technology? Look, very similar to that ad that was talking about and was showing the people on the escalator. We need to make sure that we're actually able to do things without the technology, and partly that's a case of knowing how things work. There is a black box that you might have to do things. So I suppose you don't have to know how the technology works. Like you don't have to know, how a computer works in order to use a computer. So I think we just have to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of being disposable of, if things break, getting rid of those. So we don't want to always be trying to be having the fastest computer, maybe.
Mr. Silburn, there's a question from Muhammad Ashraf. What are some misconceptions about AI? Yeah, I think that's important because we don't really discuss yet in Malaysia.
Yes. I think that one of the misconceptions is that people think that it will actually be able to do everything for you. But you still need to have people that will program for artificial intelligence. And you really do need to have, it's going to be a change of jobs. So a lot of our students, that's what they'll be working in. But it's a way of doing things faster, I suppose, and more efficient. If I want to find out what the temperature is outside, and I can stick my head outside and I can look, I can put out a thermometer outside. But what I could do is I could go into ChatGPT and ask that computer to tell me what the temperature is now, and give me a forecast for my particular area. And what happens now with what's called Auto GPT is ChatGPT will answer the question that you have, and that will be limited. But Auto GPT will go through it and will keep on asking questions based on the answer that you get. So your final answer is going to be more refined and more appropriate for you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Silburn. There's another question. It's very general. I guess it's from a student. Why is technology important for everyone, and what are the benefits of technology for us?
Well, technology is probably not important for everybody. There will be some jobs that you won't need to have technology. And the same debate we could say is that to be able to read and to write, not everybody needs to be able to read and write to do their job. They don't need to read and write maybe to do the things that they do at home. But there will be times that you need to know technology to actually work as part of our social structure, to actually understand what's going on. And I suppose it's one thing which is changing the workforce. It used to be that you'd start off in a company and you'd learn the ropes from the beginning, and as you got older, you've become the master of the skill, the master of the information, and then you'd be placed into a supervisory type role. But that's changed now because our technology, it's so easy to be left behind. So people my age, unless they keep up to date, they'll just be left behind. And the jobs will be taken by people that are younger but have kept up to date.
And Dr. Stephen, I guess this is going to be the last question, and it's from me. So I'm teaching at a vocational school. Our students, they are learning vocational skills like automotive, cooking, construction. But there's always a fear that when they are learning the technology at schools, by the time they graduate, the technology is not being used anymore. And sometimes the technology that we are using at the school to teach them, they are not, they are already outdated and they are not being used in the industry anymore, because to buy new equipment, new machines, they can be very expensive, they take time. So how do we prepare our students for some, because they are learning something, and by the time they graduate and they're entering the workforce, that kind of technology is already outdated. And how do we prepare them for that?
Well, I think it's one of those that we sometimes talk about soft skills that you need to actually to work. So an employer doesn't want somebody that knows everything. What they want is someone that's got those skills, that can communicate, turn up for the job, and solve problems. And most of the time, the employer will pass on the information that you need. Okay, and you have to remember that those skills that you need, like different computer programs, they would be changing every year. They'll just keep on changing. So you need to have the basic education to be able to move into that system. But can I just give you an example? My oldest son, in our schools, we go from, our high school is from year 7 to year 12. Now, a lot of students only go up to year 10. So my oldest son, he actually went up to year 11. And his goal that he wanted to be, as far as an occupation, was either a mechanic or a doctor. So to be a doctor, you've got to go to university, so you've got to be able to get in, the entrance to that. Well, he actually started working as a mechanic, and then started working in a hospital, and then trained as a paramedic. And he's now just started second year of medicine to become a doctor. So, a lot of the times in a school, and I put teachers down when I say this, is every teacher went to university to become a teacher. So we've got this idea that that's what is good. You should go to university, but that's not where the lifestyle. It's not where the income is for students. So if you've got somebody that wants to be a mechanic, or be a plumber or electrician, but those are the people, if they turn up for the job with their tools and then they start a business, they're the people that are actually out there earning lots of money. And I look at it, when I went through school, we just had a school reunion a few months ago, and it's amazing. Some of the students that went into trades, because they've developed their business, their lifestyle is quite good. They've retired, or they just work a few days a week. But there's no need to go straight into like a university. If you're keen on doing a trade, okay, or whatever your vocation is, that's where you should do your training. And once you've got that qualification, then you can move on to something else. So I think I was talking to teachers last week about, there was a comment made that a lot of students don't know what they want to do when they leave school.
Yeah.
And I look back and I think, well, perhaps I didn't. And in fact, if you ask most people, what they wanted to be when they were very young, they'd probably want to be policemen or work as a fireman. So, our occupations change for what we want to do. We do actually have a question there from Moe.
Yes. is it possible, from Muhammad Ashraf, is it possible that one day the AI or machine will take our job?
Oh, is that as a teacher? I think there's jobs like teaching and jobs like anything to do with medicine and health. Okay, you will still need people. But in saying that, the breakthroughs that we're using with artificial intelligence to actually analyze the symptoms that people have got. Like, you send somebody off for a blood test and you get it back. Now, you can actually have artificial intelligence that can give you the diagnosis. So we still need people that, will be there, and teachers will always be there. So, yep, we've still got a job.
So, Dr. Silburn, is it okay? We really value your what you have shared with us. It's very enlightening. But I think it's important for us to end the session now. I'm really sorry. I know a lot of participants would like to ask more questions, but due to time constraints, so is it okay if we end the session now?
Yes, that sounds fine. Yeah. And look, we'll chat over the week anyway. So it was nice to meet you again. And what is the time for you over there at the moment?
It's 9:51 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. We are 2 hours behind.
It's nice to talk to a country that I don't have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. It's not like in the UK or in the US where the time difference is huge.
Okay. Okay, thanks again. And it was
okay. So before that, everybody, can we just take group photos? So can you turn on your camera, which is very important for documentation? I'm sorry, Dr. Silburn, it's just something that we do. Okay, turn on your camera, everybody. It's also important for attendance to make sure that you are actually there and you are not just turning on your devices, but you are not around.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'll jump off then. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
Okay, just keep turning on your camera, everybody. Okay, and for your certificate link, we'll post it on the chat box. All right, we'll post it on the chat box now. Just wait a sec.
Hello guys.
I try to do it as fast as I can. So I'm sorry, can you guys just post the link there for the team? Is the link being posted? I'm sorry. Where is the link for certificate?
Wow.
Just wait, everybody. Okay, that's the link, so you can. You can. So that's the certificate link. Make sure you put your details into the certificate link so that you can get certificate in your email. And we'll use that for STL-KPM. So the system is currently down, so we can't for the teachers, so we can't log it in yet, but we can get your details from there, and then we'll update your STL-KPM on by using that certificate link. So make sure you fill that link. Okay. So I am so sorry. I have to leave now because there's something that I need to attend to. Albina, you will be staying in a while, right? So my